We have a crisis in the world, tremendous crisis, and also crisis in our consciousness, in us. I see the urgency of change, radical revolution, mutation in the mind. I see it. It is necessary. There is complete quietness of the mind, and that which is silent has vast space. Only then that which is nameless comes into being.
This is Urgency of Change, the Krishnamurti podcast. Is there a perception not born of memory, not born of knowledge? A perception that sees the whole nature and structure of conflict? A perception that is whole? Hello and welcome to episode 234 of Urgency of Change. Each episode of the Krishnamurti podcast features carefully selected extracts from the archives. The aim is to represent different aspects of Krishnamurti's radical approach to many of the issues and questions we all face in our lives. This week's theme is perception. Upcoming themes are guilt, continuity, and chattering. This is a podcast from Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. Please visit our website at kfoundation.org, where you can find a broad collection of articles and quotes, an introduction and biography, along with a comprehensive index of topics for easy access to texts and recordings. The online store stocks all available Krishnamurti books and ships worldwide. You can also find our regular quotes and videos on Instagram, TikTok and Facebook at Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review or rating on your podcast app. This helps our visibility. This week's episode on perception has 4 sections. This first extract is from Krishnamurti's second talk at Brockwood Park in 1978 and is titled Perception and Desire.
I must first understand the nature of sensation. Right? Sensory perception, senses. I must understand the way of the senses. Well, may we go on? The senses being touch, smell, and taste, and so on. And we never function with all the senses in operation. I wonder if you understand this. No? Taste becomes so extraordinarily important. If you're a gourmet, if you like good food, wine and all the rest of it, taste becomes extraordinarily important. Or if you are sensitive, music, only music becomes important. Hearing of lovely sound and the space between sounds and the quality of sound. Or something, so our senses are broken up, fragmented. We never see anything with all our senses completely. Right? Are we understanding each other? Can you look at something, the movement of the sea, the wave, the clouds, the wind among the trees, to look at it all with all your senses fully flowering and looking? Can we do that? Then when you do that, you will see as a test, you're not accepting what I am saying. Test it for yourself. Then you will see that there is no center from which you are observing. There is no division caused by the center who say, I am different from that. When you observe things totally, a woman or a man or a child, or your girlfriend, husband, wife, with all the senses awakened, then there is no one particular sense demanding an action. You're following all this? Are you doing it as we are talking about it? So, senses have their right place, but they become destructive, divisive, and conflicting when one particular sense is developed and the others are dormant or semi-dormant. Whereas when you observe something entirely with all your senses, then there is no division in yourself. So, desire is part of these sensations, is the beginning of sensation. Right? That's a fact, isn't it? See a beautiful woman or a man or a child or a car or a mountain or a lovely proportioned house or a garden, and perception, sensation, and the desire arises, right? And the desire, that sensation, perception, sensation, creates the image, and then desire begins to operate. That's the whole movement of desire. This is a simple, obvious, daily fact which you can observe if you are paying attention. So, where does the conflict, the trouble, the confusion begin? In the movement of desire. Right? You're following? Say, for example, I see a beautiful tree or a lovely garden. I've got a piece of land and I like to have such a beautiful garden myself. That is, there is perception, sensation, the image making, which is thought, right? And then thought pursues that which it has observed, which it has pleased. So, wherever there is the movement of thought with regard to sensation, then desire brings conflict. Are you understanding this? Is this clear, or am I... No, I see it's not. I have to repeat it differently. There is perception of a beautiful house, well proportioned, all the rest of it. Then there is sensation. That's normal. That's essential. Otherwise I'm blind. My senses are not acute, aware. But the trouble begins the moment thought creates the image of owning a house like that and working for it, identifying oneself with that house, and so on. So where thought begins to interfere with the perception, then there is division, then desire begins. You followed this? Is this clear? No, not what I'm saying, for yourself. Are you also working as hard as we are all working? It's hot in here. Are you working as hard? I hope so. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. So, The question is, it's natural to have the perception, sensation, that's natural. But can that moment stop and not thought come in and create an image and pursue that image which becomes desire? You understand what I'm saying? You understand my question? That is, sensation, perception, sensation is normal, healthy. But when thought comes in, creates the image, then the image is pursued as desire, then the trouble begins. Haven't you noticed in yourself? You can see a beautiful car, and there's sensation, and the image that you're driving it, the power you have, and all that. But whereas seeing the car, sensation, and stop there. Can you do it? You try it. And see what is involved in it. In that there is no control. You see the whole implication of desire. How it arises, how thought then creates the image and pursues it. Whereas perception, sensation, and looking at the car, or the mountain, the girl, or the boy, or whatever it is, then there is no conflict, there is no suppression of desire. Then you have the enormous energy that has been used up by the movement of thought as desire.
The second extract is from the first talk at Brockwood Park in 1971 and is titled A Different Kind of Perception.
If thought is to be the only field in which human beings can live, then human beings are doomed. This is not my invention. This is what is actually going on. Then I ask myself, is it possible for thought to operate where it is absolutely necessary, healthily, normally, objectively, efficiently, sanely, and be totally silent in every other direction? You understand? Now, how is that possible? How is it possible for thought to function there where it is absolutely necessary, in the most clear, objective, non-confused way, and at the same time harmoniously live in a dimension in which thought doesn't enter at all? You got my problem? Have I made the problem clear? Because human mind demands freedom. Freedom from agonies, guilt, suffering, misery, confusion. These endless wars and violence, it demands it. And thought cannot produce freedom. It can invent the idea of freedom. But that's not freedom. So the human mind must find the answer, and it can only find the answer when there is, when it has understood the nature of thinking and see its capacity, its how thought is measurable, and and find a freedom, a dimension, a state of the immeasurable in which thought doesn't function at all. See, this is what's called meditation. People have done this. But again, their meditation is part of the furthering of thought. You understand? They say, I must sit quiet. There must be control, my thoughts must be controlled. Knowing the limitation of thought, they say, I must control it. I must discipline it. I must hold it in check. Don't let it wander. They have disciplined themselves tremendously. But they haven't got the other dimension. Because thought cannot enter into that at all. So man has done everything, you follow? The really serious ones, the people who have really deeply inquired into this, not the casual people. And yet, thought has been their major instrument. And therefore they have never solved this problem. They have invented things. They have speculated. And poor fools like us accept these speculations. Great philosophers, teachers, you follow? The whole gamut of them. And I ask myself, and I hope you're asking it, how can this happen? Obviously, there must be a different kind of meditation, a different kind of perception. That is, seeing and not evaluating. To see the operations of thought, all its inward, outward movement, just to observe it, without giving it any direction, forcing it in any way, just to observe it completely, without any choice. That is a different kind of perception. Because we see, but we always give it a direction. We say this must not be, or this should be. I must overcome it. All that is the old way of responding to any action, to any feeling, to any idea, but to observe without any direction, without any pressure, without any distortion. Is that possible at all? To see myself as I am without any condemnation. Saying I'll keep this and I'll reject that. Can you do it? Then perception has a different quality, right? Then it becomes a living thing, not the repetitive pattern of the past. So, in the very act of listening, as we are doing now, in that very act of listening, you see the truth of it. That there is, to perceive, really, there must be no directive or persuasion or compulsion. Just to observe. In that observation, you will see thought doesn't enter at all. You follow? Which means in that perception, in that seeing, there is complete attention.
The third extract is from Krishnamurti's third talk in Saanen, 1981, and is titled A Perception Free of Time and Thought.
We have knowledge, great deal of knowledge about the world, matter, about the universe, and also a great deal of historical knowledge about ourselves. Whole history is the story of mankind. And if we know how to read that book, which is me, myself, my consciousness, I may have tremendous knowledge about myself. And will that knowledge free the human being from conflict? You want? Please go along with. Or it has nothing to do with analysis, discovering the various causes and factors of conflict. We can go into that. Will the cause or many causes and through analytical discovery, will that free the mind, the brain from conflict? Conflict not only while we are awake during the daytime, but also this conflict carried on while we are asleep. You can examine the dreams, interpret dreams, go into the whole nature of why human beings dream at all. And will that solve conflict? Will the analytical brain, analyzing very clearly, rationally, sanely the cause of conflict, there are many causes, many factors of conflict, will that analysis end conflict? Analysis being not only time, but the analyzer separating himself from the object, which is conflict, and then try to analyze that conflict, so separating himself from conflict. Will that solve it? Or it has nothing whatsoever to do, or it has nothing whatsoever to do with any of these processes. That is analysis, discovering the cause, and trying to force ourselves to be free from that cause, or through various examinations, acquiring a great deal of knowledge about ourselves. Will that solve the problem of conflict? Or following somebody who says, I will show you the way. I am free from conflict, but I'll show you the way. Will that help you? This has been the part of the priest, part of the guru, part of the so-called enlightened man. Follow me, I'll show you. Or I'll point out, you go. And we have had all this through millennia upon millennia. History shows this. And yet man has not been able to solve that one deep-rooted conflict. Right? Let us together find out not a way, not a verbal indication, not an intellectual verbal concept. Let's find out together if there is a way, if there is a perception, an action that will end conflict, not gradually, end it immediately. You understand my question? Please first understand the question. What are the implications of that question? The brain being programmed or wired, programmed to conflict. It is caught in that pattern. You can see it for oneself. And we are asking if that pattern can be broken immediately, not gradually. Either you think to break it through drugs, through alcohol, through sex, through different forms of discipline, through different forms of handing oneself over to something. Man has tried 1,000 different ways to escape from this terror of conflict. Right? And we are asking, is it possible for a brain so conditioned to break that conditioning immediately? Right? This is maybe a theoretical, non-actual question. Which that's impossible. It's just a theory. It's just a wish, a desire to be free of this. But if you examine the thing rationally, logically, which is part of our intelligence, time will not solve this conditioning, right? That's the first thing to realize. Not tomorrow. There is no psychological tomorrow. I won't go into that for the moment. I'm just saying that implies time. If one sees actually, not verbally, deeply in one's heart, in one's mind, in one's very, very depth of one's being, time will not solve this problem. That means you have already broken the pattern, beginning to see the cracks in the pattern, because we have accepted time, right, as a means of unraveling, breaking up this programmed brain. So when you observe clearly that time under no circumstance will free the brain from time. We mean by time, as it is now conditioned, programmed, I will examine it, make efforts to break it, uncondition it. All that process involves time. Right? So when you do that, you are caught in the same pattern. You have not moved away from it. Right? But once you clearly for yourself see, absolutely, irrevocably, that time is not a factor, then already you begin to see the cracks in the wall in the enclosure of the brain, right? Are you doing it now? Because philosophers and scientists have said time is a factor of growth, biologically, linguistically, technologically. Time is necessary. But they've never gone, perhaps some may have, I don't know, we don't know, never inquired into the nature of psychological time. And this inquiry into time implies the whole psychological becoming. Right? I am this, but I will be that. I am unhappy, unfulfilled, desperately lonely, but tomorrow will be different. So, is our brain, which is common to all mankind, is not your brain. It may have certain peculiarities, tendencies, but this brain of mine and yours has evolved through time. It's not my brain. Biologically it is so, it's not my brain. And that brain has been evolving through centuries to come to this point through conflict. Right? Are we moving together? Do we see together the rationality of it? The logic of it? That our consciousness, not ours, but human consciousness, which we went into very carefully the other day. And to realize that it is the human consciousness, you've already broken the pattern of individual consciousness. Right? So if one realizes that time is a factor of conflict, right? Then that very perception is action, is decision has taken place. You don't have to decide. The very perception is the action and decision. Right? You have to, please, we have to work together. It's not just you listen and I agree or disagree. We are working together. Now, there are multiple forms of conflict. There are 1,000 opinions, so there are 1,000 ways of conflict. We are not talking about the many forms of conflict, but conflict itself. Not my particular conflict. I don't get on with my wife or with my businessman or this or that. But the conflict of the human brain in its existence. Is there a perception? Please just first listen. You may agree or not agree afterward, but just listen first. Is there a perception not born of memory, not born of knowledge, a perception that sees the whole nature of conflict, the whole nature, the nature and the structure of conflict, the perception of that whole? Is there such perception at all? You understand? Not analytical perception, not intellectual observation of the conflict, various types of conflict, nor an emotional response to conflict. But we are asking, is there a perception, not of remembrance, which is time, which is thought? Is there a perception which is not of time or thought, which can see the whole nature of conflict, and that very perception is the ending of that conflict? That's my question to you. You understand the question? That is, thought is time. Right? You see that? Thought. Thought is memory, knowledge, experience, put together in the brain as memory. All that is the result of time. I didn't know a week ago, but I know. And so on. The multiplication of knowledge, the expanse of knowledge, the depth of knowledge is of time. So thought is time. Right? Obvious. It's any movement, any psychological movement is time. Right? It's not, don't agree with me, it is so. If I want to go from here to Montreux, I must time. If I want to learn a language, time. If I want to meet somebody at a distant place, it requires time. That time can be shortened or lengthened. And the same process, the outward process is carried inwardly. I am not, I will be. And the expanse of that. So, thought is time. Thought and time are indivisible. Can we go on? Do we see this fact? And we're asking a question. Is there a perception which is not time and thought? That perception entirely out of the pattern of the brain which has been accustomed to certain patterns, certain modes, certain ways. Clear? Is there such thing? And perhaps that alone is going to solve the problem. Right? Because we have not solved the problem of million years of conflict. We are continuing same pattern. We must find intelligently, hesitantly, with care, if there is a way of, is there a perception which covers the whole of conflict, and that very perception breaks up the pattern. Right? Now, how shall we meet this together? You understand? The speaker has put this question forward. It may be wrong, it may be silly, irrational, but after you have listened to it very carefully, if you have listened, it is our responsibility, yours as well as mine, as well as the speaker, to see if it is so, if it is possible, right? Not say, well, it's not possible, because I have done it. It's not within my sphere. I haven't thought enough about it. Or I don't want to think about that way at all, because I'm satisfied with my conflict, because I'm quite certain one day humanity will be free of conflict. That's all just an escape from the problem, right? Are we together in this now? Together, being aware of all the complexities of conflict, aware, not denying it. It's there. It's there as actual as pain in the body. It's there. One is aware of it. Aware without any choice. It is so. And at the same time, asking the question whether there is a different approach to this altogether. Vous avez compris? Now, can we observe, doesn't matter what it is, without the word, without the naming, without the remembrance? You understand? Can you do it? To look at your friend or your wife or your whatever it is, to observe the person without the word, my wife, my friend. We belong to the same little group. Without any of that, to observe, which is not observed through remembrance. Can you do it? Can we do that? Have you ever directly tried it? Now as you're sitting there, can we do it together? That is, not only look at the person without name, without time and remembrance, and also at ourselves. You understand? The image that we have built about ourselves, the image which we have built about the other, to look at that image without any, as though you're looking at it for the first time, looking at a rose for the first time. Will you do that? That is to learn to look. Learn to observe this quality without all the operation of thought. Don't say it's not possible. So it's like going to a professor, not knowing your subject, his subject, but you want to learn from him. I'm not your professor. You want to learn from him. So you go to him and listen. You don't say, I know something about it, or you're wrong, or you're right, or I don't like your look. You listen. You find out. And as you begin to listen sensitively, with awareness, you begin to discover whether it is a phony professor with a lot of words, or a professor that has really gone into the depth of himself. You understand? Now can we together so listen and observe without the word, without remembrance, without all the movement of thought, which means complete attention. Right? Attention not from a center to attain, but attention which has no center. Of course, if you have a center from which you are attending, that's merely a form of concentration. But if there is no center but you are attending, which means you are giving your complete attention, In that attention, there is no time. Right? I wonder if you see this. I'm listening. Suppose I'm listening to you. You're telling me a story. Story which is a story of myself, a story of mankind. You're telling me that story. And I'm listening to you because I don't know anything about it. But as I'm listening not only to what you are saying verbally, to communicate what you think, but in that very sensitive attention to listening, I am not only listening to the words, but I've gone beyond the words. I'm capturing the depth of the meaning of what he's saying. You understand? Are we doing this? Look, many of you, unfortunately or fortunately, have heard the speaker for many years. And you see, this breaking the program of the brain has not come about. And you repeat that statement over a year after year. It hasn't come about. Is it because, please listen, is it because you want to attain, become, have that state of brain in which the pattern has been broken? You follow? That is, you have listened, it has not come about, and you are hoping it will come about, which is another form of becoming. Right? So you are still in conflict. And you say, well, you brush me aside, or say, well, I won't come here anymore because I haven't got what I want. I want that, but I haven't got it. So the wanting is the becoming. I wonder if you see all this. The desire to be something is the beginning of conflict. And that desire is part of the programmed brain. And we are saying to break that pattern, observe without the movement of time thought. Sounds very simple. But see the logic of it, the reason, the sanity of it. Not because the speaker says so, it is saying. So, one must exercise the capacity to be logic, rational, and know its limitation. Because rational thinking, rational observation is still part of thought. And knowing that thought is limited, be aware of that limitation and don't push it further. Because it will still be limited however far you go. Whereas if you say, now, can I observe a rose, a flower, without the word, without the color, just look at it. That looks brings about great sensitivity, breaks down this sense of heaviness of the brain. And gives extraordinary vitality, because thought has its own energy through conflict. obviously. But there is a totally different kind of energy when there is pure perception, which is not related to thought, time.
The final extract in this episode is from the fourth talk at Brockwood Park in 1972 and is titled The Light of Perception.
I do not know if you ever thought or gone into yourself to find out what is space. Not science fiction space or time according to science fiction, or timelessness according to them, but to inquire, to learn what is space. We're going to do this. Can the mind seize its own limitation, and the very perception of that limitation is the ending of that limitation? Not how to empty the mind, but to see totally the content of its and the consciousness, the content which makes up consciousness, to see that totally. And to see, perceive, listen to all this movement of that consciousness. And the very perception of it is the ending of it. Not how to end it. You understand? If I see something false, the very perception of the false is the truth. I don't know if you see it. Do you understand? The very perception of my telling a lie is the truth. You understand this? The very perception of my envy is the freedom from envy, is the truth. That is, you can only see very clearly, observe very clearly, when there is no observer. That the observer is the past, the image, the conclusion, the opinion, the judgment. So can the mind see clearly, without any effort, its content, the limitation, which means the lack of space, and the time-binding quality of consciousness with its content. Right? Can you see this? And you can only see the totality of it, both the unconscious content as well as the conscious content, when you can look silently, when the observer is totally silent. That is, if I want to see you, my vision mustn't be blurred. I must have very good eyesight to see all the outline of your hair, the structure of your face, the bone, and so on. So I must look very clearly. That means there must be attention. And in that attention there is energy. Whereas, when you make an effort to be attentive, that effort is a wastage of energy. When you try to control, that's a wastage of energy. Control implies conformity, comparison, suppression. All that's there is a wastage of energy. Whereas when there is perception, there is attention, which is total energy, in which there is not a breath of wasting of energy. Now, when you look with that energy, the whole conscious as well as the unconscious content, the mind then is empty. This is not my illusion. You understand? This isn't what I think or conclusion I have come to. If I have a conclusion, if I think this is right, then I am in illusion. And knowing to be an illusion, I wouldn't talk. Because then it's like blind leading the blind. But you can see for yourself the logic of it, the sanity of it. That is, if you are listening, if you are paying attention, if you really want to find out. That is, how is it possible for the unconscious with its content to expose totally all its depth? You understood? You got it, sir? First see the question and then we can proceed from there. Like everything else in life, we have divided consciousness into the conscious and the unconscious. The artist, the businessman, you follow? This division, this fragmentation exists, induced by our culture, by our education, by all the rest of it. And you're asking a question which is, there is this division between consciousness and unconscious, and the unconscious has its motives, its racial inheritance, its experience, and so on, so on. All its. How can that be exposed to the light of intelligence, to the light of perception? Do you ask this question? If you ask this question, are you asking it as an analyzer who is going to analyze the content, and therefore division, contradiction, conflict, struggle, and all the rest of it? Or are you asking this question not knowing the answer? You're following this? Because this is important. If you're asking the question, which is, there is all this content in the unconscious. I don't know, honestly, seriously, how to expose this whole structure of consciousness which is hidden. I really don't know. Therefore, when you approach it not knowing, You're going to learn. But if you have any kind of conclusion, opinion, for or against, that it cannot be, that it can be, then you are approaching with a mind that has already assumed the answer, or no answer. Therefore, a mind that says, I do not know, which is the truth, which is honesty, I may know it according to some philosopher, some psychologist, some analyst, but it's not your knowing it. They're knowing it and you interpreting it and trying to understand them, not what is actual. So when you say, I do not know, right, what is there then? You have understood? When you say, I do not know, the content has no importance whatsoever. You get it? Oh, do see this. Because the mind then is fresh mind. You understand? It's a new mind that says, I don't know. Therefore, when you say it with, not just verbally for amusement, with depth, with meaning, with honesty, that state of mind that does not know is empty of its consciousness, is empty of its content. It is the knowing that is the content. Oh, my Lord. You got it? You see it? So the mind can never say it knows. Therefore it is always moving, living, active. Therefore it has no anchorage. It's only when it is anchored, it gathers opinions, conclusions, and separation. Now, this is meditation. Which is meditation is to perceive the truth each second. Not the truth ultimately. To perceive the truth and the false each second. To perceive the truth that content is consciousness. That is the truth. To see the truth that I do not know how to deal with this thing. Right? That is the truth, not knowing. Therefore, not knowing is the state in which there is no content. It is so terribly simple. That's what you are objecting to. You want something clever, complicated, put together. And you object to see something extraordinarily simple and therefore extraordinarily beautiful. So, can the mind, which is the brain, see its own limitation, limitation of time, which is the bondage of time, and the limitation of space. And as long as one lives within that limited space and time-binding movement, there must be suffering. There must be psychological despair, hope, and all the anxiety, everything takes place. So when the mind has perceived the truth of this, then what is time? Then is there a different dimension which thought cannot touch, therefore cannot describe. We said thought is measure, and therefore time. We live by measurement. All our structure of thinking is based on measurement, which is comparison and all that which we've gone into last few days. And thought as measurement tries to go beyond itself and discover for itself if there is something immeasurable, which is not measurable. And to see the falseness of it is the truth. You understand? I wonder if you see this. The truth is to see the false. And the false is when thought seeks that which is not measurable, which is not of time, which is not of the space with its content of consciousness. So, you understand, when you have put all these questions and have inquired, when you have learnt as you go along, then your mind and your brain becomes extraordinarily quiet. There is no need for any discipline, any teacher, any guru, any system to make you quiet.